Hello, everybody. Welcome. So glad you're here. Myself and
Hi, Sarah.
Sarah. Yeah, welcome. It looks like you're all popping in from all over. We're tapestry weavers. I'm Rebecca Mezoff, and this is Sarah Swett.
And I am
And
so excited to be here, even though this is my first YouTube live and I can't quite figure out where the camera is. So forgive me as I do that.
you'll be fine. We'll be good. Yeah, we are just so happy to come and talk about tapestry weaving. It looks like y'all are here from just all over the place. Oh, someone's here from Fort Collins, which is just in the
Up
town
the
where I
road.
am. So I'm in Fort Collins, and Sarah is in,
Moscow, Idaho, just a few hundred miles northwest, slightly of you.
or 1,000 plus, I
Yeah,
don't know,
is it? I
800,
haven't
nine
measured.
hundred, 800 maybe.
Okay.
On the other side of Wyoming, she lives.
Yeah.
I'm so thrilled to see you all from all over. It looks like there's some people from the UK and Oregon and California and Seattle and Texas. I'm going to try to keep up with your questions on if you have typed questions. If it has been a while and I have clearly scrolled past them and your question is important, you should ask it again. But so what we're going to do is have a little chat about tapestry weaving and the Fringeless for Selvedge method, which Sarah and I made a class about. And has it been 5 years now, Sarah?
I think so.
It's
I think
almost
so.
5 years, I think, that we
Yeah.
made it. So I went up to her studio in Moscow, which you can see behind her is gorgeous. And we filmed the whole thing and we had a ton of fun. And so 5 years later, we have still having a ton of fun. And we thought there's a lot of people who would probably love this class. So we're going to answer questions about that and anything else you want to ask about, mostly about tapestry weaving. I don't know. We might have to sort through other stuff, right?
Well, you're allowed to ask about our dogs.
You can ask about our dogs.
Yeah.
If I ignore a personal question, don't take offense. But I might answer. Who knows? Yeah, I'm just scrolling through. Y'all are coming from all over Canada, Sweden, Massachusetts, Santa Fe, Indianapolis. Mandy's here from Crete. That's always
Oh,
fun.
oh,
I mean, you might get the award for farthest away, Mandy, because the Australians are sleeping right now, is why.
right.
But
Yeah.
they're all asleep. It's like 1 in the morning there now. So
Thank you, Mandy,
Iowa,
for being here.
it's fantastic. Oh, I lied. Lee is here from Western Australia,
Oh,
where it is 1 in the morning. So you get the award, Lee. I
that
am
is, I am so
impressed.
flattered I can hardly believe it.
I know. I am also super impressed. Gail's here from Edinburgh. Carol from Arizona, California, England. Oh, you guys, it's really fun to see everybody popping in. Lots of people who come to change the shed. And Gloria's here from Longmont, right down the road. Amelia's here from Moscow, Idaho.
All
So
right.
glad
All
you're
right.
here, Amelia. There's all those connections with places in the world, right? And they just, like, oh, I want to go there. Oh, I've been there. Oh, you live in a beautiful place. So, okay, let me not get distracted by all you wonderful people. We're so happy you're here. So let's just do a quick introduction, Sarah. You tell us what you do in the fiber world, and I'll try to say what I do. And I think a lot of you sort of know what we do, but
Yeah.
we'll try to box it in a little.
It is, although it's hard to sum up
Up. Yeah.
because we both do so many things. I guess at its most elemental, I kind of tell stories with yarn, whether it's with the actual words. I actually tell stories about like a recipe here, you can make crackers with yarn if you want to, or about my daily life. And I've been doing it pretty much for, well, as long as I can remember, actually, working with fiber. But the tapestry itself, I started in 1989 in a class that I very reluctantly took. And my weaving teacher kind of bribed me to take it because I didn't think I'd be interested. And of course, naturally she changed my life, which is one of those odd things that happen, things that just show up out of the blue. You happen to catch something out of the corner of your eye, and the next thing you know, you're weaving tapestry with dead leaves or used coffee filters, and you're still talking about your life, but this medium kind of holds it all together. Speaking of boxes, so in a sense, it's the yarn and really tapestry that's kind of defined most of my last 30 years-ish. And I thought I was really late starting too. You know, I was like ancient at 28 when I learned to do it.
Well, now you're 29 and a half, so.
Exactly. It's just been 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
God, they were busy 5 minutes though. Man.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
Rebecca is an astonishing creature, and I want to hear how you sum yourself up.
This, well, this will be interesting because I didn't actually come up with such a wonderful thing to say as my work is about stories. That was fantastic. I love it. Yes, I started weaving tapestry and not like a minute ago. It feels like a minute ago, but it really was like 15 years ago. And I grew up in New Mexico and went back there to learn tapestry weaving in traditional, ways and then I learned from, European sort of based tapestry. We have all kinds of opinions about what tapestry is and where it comes from, but I think it all comes down to it's a wonderful thing to practice and it's in your hands and helps you get thoughts in your head out into fiber. And I think both of us probably would say maybe we don't need quite as many rules as sometimes it feels like there are. Is that, maybe.
I would say that the warp and the weft don't really care what you do with them as long as you're exploring and interested and have them in your hands. And that there are ways well, I will say I am always a fan of the freedom of limitation. So sometimes it's very restful to give yourself some boundaries. So for some people, rules are really restful. They can rest against the rules. And actually, I was thinking about this, Rebecca, over those years. Like, my first chunk of tapestry was, how on earth does this work? Can I make shapes? Can I keep my selvedges straight? And then it was, well, what else can I do with this? And then I would experiment with warp, and then I experimented with dyes. And so I expanded what my limitations were, but sometimes it is handy to decide for a period of time to use some structure. And the warp and the weft are themselves a structure, right?
Yeah.
But they allow for so much.
It's kind of a miracle.
It is.
Yeah.
It really
I feel like that is like Sarah is like a breath ahead of me in age, just this much.
Yes.
And way ahead of me in experience in tapestry. But that's like the biggest thing I've learned from you is this like value of limitations, but also like experiment, try, play. Play is a big thing. So I love that. And
one of the things that, it was said by a character in an Agatha Christie book. It was somebody who was Mrs. Ariadne Oliver. She actually was Agatha Christie's sort of stand-in for herself. And one day Hercule Poirot said to her, "Oh, Mrs. Oliver, you so seem to enjoy your life." And Mrs. Oliver said, "Well, you never know what's going to happen." And I, at that moment, thought, oh my goodness, you can say those same words like, you never know what's going to happen, and be really afraid, or you can say those same words with curiosity and delight and your shoulders down instead of your shoulders up around your ears, and suddenly you're free to play with in whatever way calls you to play.
I love it. Yes, it's fantastic. And what a good lesson in not for life, right?
Yeah. Well,
yeah. And I had a medical career before this, like a whole career. And I got into tapestry and I was like, this is really fun. I want to do this all the time. And so I started making online classes. And I don't even know why. I just was like, oh, in my spare time, I'm going to teach people to do this because I have been a big teacher. I used to teach piano. Did you know that? I was a piano teacher, you guys.
Amazing.
1,000 years ago. I taught little tiny kids and
Good.
adults piano. Anyway,
That must have been so fun.
it was
I wish you'd been my
fun.
piano teacher.
I think it was fun. I think I would do it differently now, but Anyway, got into teaching online classes, and here we are. I think my first one. Some of you here probably were in that very first class in 2014. So it's been almost 10 years it'll be 10 years in March that I started doing online classes and weaving. And then I actually retired from my career as an occupational therapist. So that was fun. And now I get to play all the time. So
Well,
talking
and it
about
was thanks
playing.
to all of you coming to want to learn this, and that Rebecca could do this totally cutting edge thing that was not a thing at the time until she made it one. And it's really been thrilling because it's brought so many people to tapestry.
DL says there are no tapestry police, right?
Yeah.
There are no tapestry police.
See, I can't even tell where this camera is. I was moving my thumb around. Sorry.
This is everybody's been on Change the Shed realizes that after what I've done this for 3 years, I still am like, I don't know where any. It's just weird to have the thing flipped over. So forgive us, you all. Yeah. Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah, Christine says medical, occupational therapy, health through use of your hands. So that's a big thing. I mean, that's for us, that's our life is like being able to make things.
Yeah, I have to say, one of the oddest things about materials is how the materials themselves, working with them. I mean, I know a lot of you probably don't want to cut used coffee filters into yarn, but there was a period where there was this, I would spend hours, and I still do, in fact, spend hours cutting little coffee filters into circles. And it was phenomenally restful. And I feel the same way when I was feeling a little bit nervous about coming on this morning. I just went and got my spindle and wandered around outside in the sun with my spindle, making yarn. And the same with just tapping weft into warp. It is just so, I just think it's good for our brains,
Agreed.
for our lives, for everything. And all the pieces
Yes.
are as well. So, I mean, not that we're doing this for your health, you're doing this for your health,
No.
but it is there. I think it's always a part of it.
Yeah, for sure. That, gosh, yeah. That's what I should have done this morning. But I was playing with puppies, so that might also
I think
help.
same benefit
Yeah,
for sure.
when you get just a little nervous, which I still do after being on camera for 10 years. Okay. Oh, Pamela, here's a question for you, Sarah. So part of Sarah's history, which we don't have time for her to go over all of it, but she has woven one of her novels. And so Pamela's question is, will you do a class on weaving text? Which I don't know that she can answer, but the texting is cool.
I am not sure I can answer that. I've thought about it. Not quite sure how to structure it exactly, because I can show specifically how I weave the font that I use the most, or in fact your handwriting, as I said, like with this, where is it? With this recipe, which is actually my husband's handwriting. So I wanted to preserve his handwriting, but the novel tapestries, which I will show, I wanted to show you later because this is a for selvage piece, so it has this little for selvage edge at the bottom, and it has
That's so cool.
miles and miles of text. But you can also see this little for selvage edge at the top, and you can see it's quite uneven, which I was deliberate because, as you might have noticed, this is actually based on a receipt. A grocery receipt, so it's messy. So having a messy top is fine, but it is a for selvage tapestry with a lot of text. So teaching a class, I'd have to figure out how, and I don't know how really. So
We'll think about it.
mostly, yeah, and also you could just start if you already know how to weave shapes. Just start. And like Rebecca's book talks so much about ways to use the structure of it. Like for little tiny words, you can use the highs and the lows. And maybe I'm getting too technical here, but it really is amazing that it's just shapes. It's just lots of little shapes.
Yes, it is shit. And so this is what I actually been talking about this in one of the other classes I do is the Tapestry Discovery Box. And I was just talking to somebody yesterday about who was really having trouble with weaving. We were weaving sideways. And that perceptual change of it being sideways, I'm like, they're just shapes. But it's hard to make that shift, right? Like I'm weaving an R, not a shape.
Right. Well, actually, that's one of the, we were going to show this because somebody had asked about for Selvedge tapestry for things like mobiles. And so I brought this little mobile that I made just to show that it can be. And you can, of course, these were all woven sideways. So in this case, this text was woven this way. Oops, that's the wrong, let's do it that way. Because of course, mirror writing. So to read it, let's see, which way does it go? There it is, the way you'd read it. But the way I wove it, in fact, I think I probably wove it this way, starting with the P. So again, there's the shape. You weave up underneath it and then slowly build up whatever shapes, and suddenly they become letters. So in that sense, sideways is almost easier because you stop seeing them as letters and you only see them as shapes.
See, sideways is easier, you guys. Okay, so let's see. Let me ask you this question before I lose it from Paula. When weaving weft with coffee filters and other non-fiber materials, because of course when Sarah's talking about cutting coffee filters, she's going to spin those and use them for weft. So she wants to know, when you're using those kind of materials, how do you determine what kind of warp to use, like cotton, linen, or wool, or something else?
Well, that is a question I am still exploring myself, frankly. I thought at first when I began that I should use bast or cellulose warp for cellulose weft. And I did a ton of little experiments. So like here are some of them. These are some, this is one of the first ones I did with the dead leaves. So this is this is cordage here at the bottom from iris leaves or daylily leaves. And this is a different leaf that obviously was darker brown. And the background color is a gradation of handspun linen dyed with black walnut, I believe. But the leaves, the house and the bottom part are all leaves, and they were just the colors that they were. And so for a lot of these early ones, I was using linen weft, the same with this one, which I can't remember which way it goes, but it doesn't matter. So this one right here is paper. This particular paper was paper spun from those things you get in the mail sometimes, like variable annuity quarterly reports. Turns out you can use that paper and you can spin it very carefully. And it makes, it had a nice color and it made this sort of snowy mountain thing. So it's possible to use linen and it works fine. The difficulty for me is that when I start making really tiny ones, like this little one, I find that it's just harder on my hands, especially at smaller sets, to use an inflexible warp. So I started for a bunch of the words I've been using, this 4-letter word project. I've been using more wool. Oh, I back up just a second. For all the wool tapestries, I always use wool. So as I said, for wool, like this little tiny one, this is a little book, and there are the 2 covers there, and they're all wool. And I never thought of using anything but a wool warp. In fact, in the Fringeless class, I believe I might have said something somewhere about, oh, I only use wool because I am a wool person and that's all I ever use. And then promptly a month later, maybe even before the class went live, I started experimenting with flax and other, either bast or cellulose fibers. So I've had to completely change that or eat those words, except that now they're in the class and so they may be there forever. But a lot, anyway, back to your question, because I'm sorry, Rebecca, I do go on in weird directions. Here, I know. So anyway, the answer is that I've ended up now mixing and matching. And I have become a lot of the and paper and linen tapestries have been on either wool or silk warps. Silk is kind of nice because it is a little bit more flexible than linen, but it has some of the softness of wool. I am not, shh, don't tell Rebecca, I am not a huge fan of seine twine.
I
It
know.
hurts. It hurts my hands. I did use cotton warp for these two behind me as experiments. So these are all coffee filters. Both of these tapestries are coffee filters. And let's see, you can see if I tilt my screen, you can see where they go up to. There they are in full. They're each about 36 or 37 inches tall and maybe 12 inches wide. And they are all coffee filters. And I used cotton from the hardware store, just the kind you get in the
Wow.
bulk for your garden. And it's a little funky in that occasionally you find a knot and occasionally it comes untwisted slightly, but it actually did just fine, and it was way nicer on my hands than seine twine, and I didn't have to order it from anywhere. I could just walk to the grocery store with my dog, because my dog is allowed in this hardware store, and come home with my warp and warp balloon. So, yeah, I'll use whatever. Apparently, I will use whatever if it's strong enough, and if I have it at hand, and if I can make it. So this warp right here, this is I'm weaving two for selvage pieces at once. Can you see that? And we can talk about the structure of that later. Here's this one is finished. And this one, you can see I have this lovely shed all the way down here, all the way down to the bottom.
Let's, you know what, Sarah? Let's explain what Fringeless is, because I'm guessing there's some people who don't know. So let's do that. And
Sorry.
then I want you to show that again, because then it will make total sense.
Okay.
Okay. So you have such a great way of explaining this. Are you up for explaining in, a few minutes what the Fringeless method is?
I will try. It's been a long
Okay.
time.
No, you'll do
But you will fill in the blanks when I wave my arms too much.
Yeah.
Because, I do that. So Fringeless for selvage warping is a way, oops, now I'm not centered again on the camera. Okay, there we
Sorry.
go. Is a way of warping a loom so that you can weave a tapestry where when you take it off, when you release it from the loom, there is no fringe on your finished piece. It comes off the loom as is. It is a complete thing. All the edges are sealed in, as it were. There's no need for hems. There's no need for finishing. But it also has the benefit, this particular warping method, of having a good shed the whole way. Now, it's possible to weave 4 selvages with something like, with a fixed warp, as in weaving a bag on a cardboard box, or in Navajo weaving. The tradition is they weave, but they end up doing a lot of the last rows with a needle because it's very hard to get those last rows in. The way this particular warping method works, you have a good shed. You get to make this shed as this whole time, and you weave with a good shed all the way to the end, and then you basically seal it up. You seal up the edge, and all that. The specifics of that are in the class that we have taught. But the main piece is that because of that, you can see there's these what we call the supplemental. So here is the main tapestry right here. This is where the tapestry will be. This is the first supplemental warp, the bottom warp, which holds that in place. And the second supplemental warp is what gives you the shed. The 2 supplemental warps come out at the end of the weaving and can be used again. As you can see, all these knots. I don't know if you can see all those knots, but there are knots in there all through this supplemental warp, and it will come out in pieces. And I will use it again and again and again for future selvage tapestries. There's another piece to it that I don't know if this is too much at this moment, but in order to make that setup happen, which of course is what this entire class is, so we have hours and hours of video showing you minutely and explained specifically by Rebecca when I am not specific enough. So there's no way you can get lost to set it up. But there is the jig piece. And do you want to talk about the jig piece?
Yes, that's a good thing because I just had a question from Karen. She says, I've glanced at the Fringeless course and the jig making makes me nervous. Is there a source to purchase a finished jig, or am I worrying for nothing?
Well, I would say, I mean, you make jigs out of PVC pipe. And I brought a couple here. Here's one that my son made me. This is double-sided Velcro from the hardware store. It's absolutely divine, just like Velcro. So this is what holds the jig in place. The jig itself is a board, very messily cut with holes, drilled with holes. So we have 2 sticks with holes, and we have 2 dowels. And I can stick this in there, and then we have a jig. I can make a bigger tapestry by putting them in some of these other holes. One of the benefits of this idea of the jig, and this of course means you need to know somebody who can drill holes in a board. I don't know if hardware stores will sometimes do that for you if you buy a board, if they'll nicely drill some holes and saw some pieces of dowel to the length that you want. But that's essentially all it is. But to finish my previous sentence, the amazing thing about this is you can make a series of tapestries exactly the same size. If you use the same warp, assuming, because of course different warps will stretch slightly differently, like if you use a linen one and then you use a wool one, the wool one might be a little bit taller because of stretching. But essentially, if you use the same warp and you wind it on the same jig, you can make a whole series of tapestries that are pretty much exactly the same size. And I can show you that right here. This is actually a work in progress, which is the 99 nouns. So I'm weaving, I have, I think, somewhere in the 70s or 80s now. These are the L's. But they are all the same size because I have woven them all on a jig. So they're all pretty much exactly 3 by 5, like an index card. And I've been able to do that because I make them all on the same jig.
And there's a picture of it. This is that jig she's holding up, attached to a loom, and she's got the bottom supplemental warp on. Here's the warp you will weave on, and there's her Velcro thingies.
Yeah.
So, and then there will be a top supplemental warp here, and then she'll weave on this with a great big lovely shed. So awesome. Yeah, and what I would say about the jig is that this is probably the biggest question I get, that people are afraid they're not going to be able to make a jig. So if the wooden jig, which is fabulous, I have a couple wooden jigs also, which there used to be someone who made them and you could purchase them, but she doesn't do that anymore. So you do need to find, maybe in my next life, or maybe I'll get my dad to make jigs. You just need a drill press. So you just have to be able to drill the holes evenly. But this is my favorite one because it's so easy to make. It's just PVC. It's super cheap. And I have a bag of different sizes. So I can make, it's just 4 tees and a bag of PVC pipe, which is the cheapest thing you could get. And you do have to buy a PVC cutter, which is either a rotary cutter that cuts copper, or there's these nice little snips. It's just, this is so soft. It's just like, it's not quite like cutting paper, but you can cut through it even if your hands are not very strong. And all you have to do is measure and cut, and then put it together and you have a jig. So in my opinion, this is the simplest jig.
Well, and if you happen to have a PVC cutter, you can make yourself the world's cheapest, most unattractive and functional loom, which I know people do not, I guess I call it the loom people love to hate, because it is made out of plastic and plastic is icky, but it's also super available, super functional, and you can make this loom. The instructions, whoops, there's, you can see the elbows, the little feet, and all my spare blue tape that I just happen to have around because I use it. And there's another tapestry, another one of my words in progress with this lovely long shed. Oops, my little setup here. And there it is at the top with its, oops, now I'm tangled in my, oh my goodness, I'm so, so not doing this well.
Okay, Sarah. Okay, there's the top. Wait, let me do
There's
this
the
again.
top. So there's my tensioning device. And this is actually like one of those weird things that I just came up with once when I was teaching and traveling a lot. So it's, the tensioning device is just this bar which floats, and it's tightened with these straps. And so pulling up on this bar tightens the warp. And it isn't, the most strong in the world because it is plastic and it can only be maybe a foot wide is about as wide as it goes. But I mean, it's the cost of a piece of pipe and a few fittings. These are just extensions. I was just making it a few inches longer. So it's just a really quick and easy way to make an extension. So yeah, and it is, honestly, you can make a loom and a jig at the hardware store in no time at all.
Here's her. This is
Okay.
this is her loom and a jig. Like that's the whole setup right there.
And that's this loom here. Yeah. So that's this loom. Those are the parts of this loom. Which again, I added an extension to here. So you just add more pipe with a thing.
And
all of these are just like hardware store.
That looks like an 1/8-inch pipe, Sarah. It's quite tiny. So my hardware store doesn't carry that, but now we can get stuff online. It's amazing what you can find if you can't find the parts. But go to your hardware store and ask them to just order you 1/8-inch or 1/4-inch galvanized or black pipe. And we both have stuff on our blogs about how to make this. And there are, I think, plans for like 4 different looms in the Fringeless class. Someone did just ask whether you can use a Murex loom for Fringeless. And I have added probably more videos than you want to see. But for those of you who want to use your Murex loom, yes, you can. Actually, here, I'll show you.
Pictures?
Yeah, I have, it might not let me do this. Oh, there we go. So this loom so here's a Murex with a Fringeless warp set up on it. And I have done that quite often. I use Murex looms. I had this loom here because this is not a loom that will work for Fringeless. So a peg loom, we want something longer that has tensioning, right, Sarah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the tensioning is really important.
Yeah. Okay, so that was a great question about the Murex. Yeah, there's, I don't know, a handful of videos about things to consider with the Murex, like do you use the shedding device or can I use, various things. But yes, a Murex is a fancy pipe loom. So what you need is a loom that has tensioning. So you have to be able to put the warp on, get the jig in there, and then when the jig comes out, everything's slack. So if you can expand the loom, which is why pipe looms work so well, you get tension on the warp and then you can weave. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Any loom with tension, pretty much. I mean, I have done this in huge pipe looms, and I've also done it with a continuous warp, which is not a thing I can explain this very moment. It involves a lot of sticks because
I have 2 people have now asked, Elaine and Molly have asked, how big can I make a big tapestry? Which you showed us the receipt piece, which is what, like 72 inches long or something?
Yeah, yeah.
That was done for Selvedge, but it wasn't like the for Selvedge we teach in the class, something that big. Is that true?
That is true, although there's no reason if you have a large square loom, you can do the exact same thing on a great big loom. You just have to make a really big loom. In fact, before I started doing the continuous warp approach, I actually built the studio I'm in with super high ceilings. Sort of thinking about Susan Martin Maffei, who actually uses a fixed loom, a fixed pipe loom, very big, or else sometimes she makes them out of scaffolding. And then she just climbs up and raises herself on scaffolding so that she is at the level of the fell. So in that case, if you are doing just a square fixed thing and have the capacity to weave all the way up, you absolutely can. I will say it's a lot of supplemental warp. The putting on of the supplemental warp and keeping the tension nice, and the taking off of the supplemental warp is a process. And the bigger your tapestry, the more of a process it is, and the more supplemental warp there is to take care of. That said, it's perfectly doable once you decide to do it, and it's still way less work than warping a lot of looms for complicated patterns or really fine things. So it's absolutely doable, and I would encourage you, but I would also encourage you to start small.
I was going to say, would you start with one that big?
I would not.
Okay.
But, I have leapt off of ridiculous things just to see. So if you want to, absolutely do it. Absolutely do it. Please do tell us how it goes.
Now I feel challenged. I feel like I need to build my big pipe loom and see. I think the biggest fringeless piece I've done is about 14 inches square. So I feel challenged to do something bigger than that, Sarah.
Well, here's another thing that I learned actually from Archie and Susan, which is a 3 selvage warp. And it's something I actually do on a backstrap loom, but you can do it on any kind of loom also. And in this case, all you're doing is the bottom. You use kind of like a jig, and you use just the bottom supplemental warp, but the top, you just use a complete warp. You just keep going as if you were warping. You're just warping around this thing. It's hard to, once you've done the fringeless thing, it will make sense, but you just don't put it in the top. So that way, you don't get the doubled warp that you get, which we can talk about in a minute, but you do get that really clean bottom. In fact, I have a piece here. Oops, sorry, little mobile. Oh my goodness. Where, I don't know if you can see the loops there.
Right
There's
here.
the loops. So here's the loops that you see at the bottom of a fringeless warp. And I wove this direction. And so there's fringe at this end because that's the end I finished on. And this end is clean because it's 3 selvage. So I end up with 3 selvage. You got 3 selvages and a fringe. In this case, I decided to leave the fringe on for whatever reason. Well, that was a whole nother era of my weaving career where I was leaving a lot of fringe. What I called the unfortunate fringe era.
I love it. We won't talk about what decade that is, but those pieces are gorgeous. You had some of them in your solo show in 2017. So
I did, yeah.
They're
The back to front.
fantastic.
Yeah, they're pretty wacky. Well, if you spin all your warp, which was another question we had, I think, when you spin your warp, it's sort of depressing sometimes to hide it all. So you kind of want to show it off because it's like, wow, this is a really nice warp. It deserves its moment in the sun.
Now that you just said that, Cindy asked a question. Briefly, can you give her an idea of what fleeces are best for spinning warp? Because there was another spinning warp question that I had from somebody else also.
Yeah, long staple. That's all I can say. It's long staple, strong, not too bouncy, just because stretch, but long staple, strong, with a lot of twist is really the best. And so I would, Lincoln, Coopworth, BFL would probably be fine. BFL would actually be pretty nice. The main thing, though, of course, is you want it well twisted, and both in the singles and in the ply. Now that said, there is a wool warp from Brown Sheep that is a singles that has its own issues because it is a singles. You sometimes get curls at the corner of your tapestry because there is that extra twist. So a balanced warp will give you a more stable structure. But so yes, any of the ones that people usually don't want to wear against their skin are going to be excellent for tapestry warp.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Thank you, Sarah. A couple more. Let me grab a couple more questions here. Someone wanted to know the PVC loom tensioning device, and am I right to say that the one of the bars slides, and then you had straps that were tensioning the warp?
Yes, yes. So this, let's see if I can show it here. Da-da-da. Okay, let's see. This bar right here is actually a larger piece of pipe. So you can see it sort of going around. It doesn't actually fit snugly on this. So it floats. And when I pull it up, I warp with it, leaving a gap, leaving this gap right here. And then after I take off the warp, I tighten these straps and it pulls it up. I have, if you go to my old blog, which is a field guide to needlework, I think it's like archive or it's more or something like that. And you type in, or actually there's a search thing just on the whole blog. There's a lot about it. I use it a lot. I've used it for years. I've drawn pictures of it. I think I have some pictures with dimensions, and maybe not specifics on how to put it together, but it is really just a shove it together kind of thing. So there's a lot there.
And there's instructions in the class too.
Yeah, and the class has actually the best instructions because I used to put my tensioning device at the bottom. And it was somebody in the class at fairly early on who built a pipe loom and sent a picture. And she was talking about the tapestry, but I went, oh my God, she put it at the top. That was the smartest thing ever. And so now I have completely changed, and now my tensioning device is at the top instead of the bottom. So thank you, Fringeless class, for that.
Awesome.
Piece.
Yes. Yay. Yeah. See, we learn a lot from teaching too.
Ever. Always.
A couple quick things. Someone asked about changes to the class because it's been 5 years. We have not changed the video content at all. We don't need to. It's great. I have added bonus things, and Sarah has added bonus videos over the years, and those are available to everybody who's ever taken the class. So the class is available forever. Well, forever, life is long and who knows what's going to happen. But you have access to it for as long as you need it. And anytime there's an updated bonus or something like that, it goes to everybody who's ever paid for the class. So hopefully that.
So that means also people can sign up at any time and they don't have to use it right away too.
Right, you can sign up
start in 6 months or something.
And sometimes it's like, oh, someone gives you a coupon, like a bonus coupon for amount off, like might happen, and that might expire, and you might want to purchase it, and then you're like, I can do this in November or something. So there is that too. Let's see. I've got a couple other. There were some questions. Let me ask. This is a lot of people are asking about the saffron loom, and I don't have one right here, but it's the Murex loom that has the bar top and bottom and the threaded rod in the middle. Mm-hmm. So my problem with doing Fringeless on that, first of all, it's too short. You don't get the nice long shed. I mean, you can kind of, but there's no place to attach the jig. So if you did like a strap jig or something, but because it doesn't have those side supports, I don't think it's the best choice for Fringeless, is my opinion. This is another kind of loom you might consider. The copper pipe loom, we have instructions for this. This is a fantastic, unfortunately, this is not a for Selvedge warp, but fantastic loom for tapestry. And you can go to the hardware store and you just need one little cutting tool and you can put that thing together, and glue or solder if you're really fancy. But I think that one is actually glued. So the saffron or the Chloe Murex looms are not the best for tapestry. I think if you put a longer threaded rod and you figured out a way to make a jig that you could keep in place while you were warping it. But if the jig doesn't have something to stabilize on the sides, then you have kind of a mess, I think. Stephen's asking about the stress on your fingers, hands, wrists, arms, shoulders, ergonomics from your work. And yeah, do you want to address that briefly, Sarah?
Well, you're the OT or former OT, the retired
retired OT.
The retired OT. So you can, I mean, I often think of you when I draw my comics of me weaving. And I think, oh, Rebecca's going to have something to say about the posture of that person that I just drew.
Nah.
But I will say that it is super important for me to have things as easy as possible on my hands. I have some contracture. You can see my pinky here doesn't straighten, and I have these other fingers that no longer straighten. That has nothing to do with tapestry. It's genetic, but it can potentially affect it. I also have arthritis. I have woven a lot. I have woven, a lot.
Yeah, a lot.
I actually was going through old slides trying to sort out. There were tapestries, big ones that I had completely forgotten I made.
Wow.
It is, yeah. I lost count of the biggish ones while we were pushing, I don't know, 100. So, and I have spun a lot, and I have sewn a lot, and I have also worked trails for the Forest Service swinging a pick. So I've used my hands hard, and they have done me well. I am thrilled with all they have done, and they're also somewhat tired. So I will do anything to be kind to them, and that includes using wool warp or a slightly stretchy warp or cotton rather than linen if possible, because that is gentler on them. I will also, one of the things again about the Fringeless versus making small things having to use a needle, anything that requires tight tension and gripping is hard on my hands. So having an open warp, I would say actually tapestry is one of the easier things that I do as long as I keep it fairly simple. The word weaving is as specific and as tensionful as I like to go, and I've been alternating, and I won't say it's completely why I have moved from a lot of pictorial work to more to I don't know what you call this, elemental materials
There we go.
based work. Some of it has to do with just the way the materials want to be woven. Somehow they don't want to tell stories as much. I do that with my comics. And some of it is because the more precise and intricate the work, the harder it is on my hands, and I can feel it through here. And all the way up to my shoulders, actually, and I do get a fair bit of work done on my shoulders, and I try to roll out my hands with tennis balls and forearms and all that stuff. I mean, forearms, who knew? Forearms, really, really tight. Lot of tension, all this little minute finger stuff plays out through here for me. And so I spent a lot of time trying to loosen those up and do support work so that I can continue to do the rest of it. But in fact, considering how hard I work them, they're doing great.
It's important for all of us to think about it, even if you're younger than we are, to think about stress over time and just how to make sure that you're taking care of your body over time. And posture at whatever loom you're using. Some people, like I love my low warp rug loom for weaving, but some people can't stand weaving on something that's horizontal, upright, or like you can build a pipe loom that's actually tilted back a little bit, or you can figure out a way to set it up on an easel.
The easel thing. I have actually I've been weaving these pipe looms. I just plunk them in I have a metal easel. It's just a very simple, it's perfect. It just holds it right. And I can change the height of the loom. The loom goes up and down. I can take it places. I can change the height of the seat I'm sitting in, because I notice different seats feel different. And actually, if I move around and sit in different postures throughout the day, I can actually weave longer. And the easel's really great because it allows me to adjust it. Also, because when I'm weaving intricate things, I like it in front of my face. That's the worst for your shoulders.
Yeah.
So but you want to, right? Or you end up looking over your glasses and going, but if I can design things that have lots of open space, then I will try to make sure that the fell is low and my arms are in a comfortable position. And it's really great to be able to do that either by changing your chair or as I said, with these pipe looms, you can put them on an easel and move them up and down. And that is a great point.
Yeah, that vertical up and down is huge if you're using, like, if you have a table that's adjustable, or figure out, like, various easels. Usually they're made for painting canvases, I think, but.
Yeah, well, I could actually snag one. Hang on a sec.
Okay. Or the chair, like she was saying, having a chair that adjusts height. Some people use like drafting chairs, or a nice office chair is really great for weaving tapestry. Marilyn asked, have I, Rebecca, made a video of
Oops, there's the top of it, if you can see.
Oh, hold on. Let me
Just
change
grabs.
this.
Oops. It doesn't work without my earbuds in.
Well, you can't. We could actually hear you, but
Could you?
you couldn't hear us.
I couldn't hear you. So there's a thing that grabs the bottom of the loom right here. And there's a thing that grabs the top of the loom right here. And those are adjustable. So you can move that up and down. And then you can move this whole mechanism up and down. And then you can change the legs. And the legs all go in. So all of this, it's just phenomenally adjustable, and it's not very big. It doesn't take up a whole lot of space by itself, and it doesn't interfere with the tapestry weaving. It doesn't have a whole lot of space, unlike some big wood loom sometimes might interfere with making the shed. This one really doesn't, because it doesn't have presence, I guess is the word.
I like it. Good ergonomic suggestions. Okay, I have just a couple more questions to go through. I'm going to pop this up because I promised you all a present.
Oh, right.
Hold on. Let me see. I got all these little things. Let's do this. This is a code for Fringeless. And some of you are talking about having purchased the class. You can always get back into it. If you've forgotten how to get into your online classes, go to my website, which is tapestryweaving.com. And under FAQ, the very top thing that comes up will tell you the link to get into your class, and it's always there. And there's a bar at the top of my website that has that link in it too. So that is how to find it. And of course, email me if you have troubles getting in because you've changed your email or forgotten your whatever. Yeah, just let me know. Okay, wait, what was I going to say? Couple other questions. Oh, Paula wants to see the top of the Mirex. Hold on. So here's the top of the Mirex loom, warped for 4 selvage. You'll notice I'm not using the coil spring there. I have just spaced it manually. I could have used the spring, but I did not. And I am not using the shedding device, which you can. Whoops, I got a Mirex and a, there's Sarah. Oh, hold on. Let's see if I can
That's
manage
all three
my
of us.
buttons. I can manage my buttons. Okay. Yes, there are different ways to use a Mirex. You can use the spring and you can use the shedding device. And we talked about that in the class. But the most important question I think Anne asked was the purpose of the jig. So I think, can you address, like, just succinctly, why are we using a jig?
Oh, succinct.
Well, you
I'll
know,
try.
I mean,
it's
important.
The jig holds the warp in place, what I call the actual warp, which is the warp that will stay with the tapestry. It holds it in the shape and the size you want your future tapestry to be while you lash on the 2 supplemental warps. There would be no way for, there is a way, I back up, there is a way to do all of this with a slightly different sort of jig without a fixed jig, but it is more complicated and it requires more hand things. This is the jig allows you to break down this process into 3 distinct and very doable steps. And that is the most important piece for me, is that with 3 warps, with the actual warp, with the bottom supplemental warp, and the top supplemental warp, you have 3 opportunities to mess up the tension. And or 3 opportunities to get the tension really, really nice.
Nice.
And if you can break them down into small steps, the jig allows you to break it down into small steps so that your main warp, which you really want to be even, is as even as you can get it. And then each of the 2 support warps are then as even as possible so that your weaving will be pleasant and your ultimate tapestry will be exactly what you envisioned. That was not very succinct, but
I think it was good. So she's saying, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but on the jig is the tapestry warp in the center. The 3 sections are the bottom supplemental, and there will be a top supplemental there. And so the jig allows it to all stay sturdy, right, Sarah?
Yes, it allows it to stay in place and controlled so that you don't have things flying all over the place and trying to weight something or put something down. As it allows you to be an octopus, which if you were an octopus, you maybe could do it without the jig more easily. But being as I am not,
I think blue tape is also one of, I think there's a big tip in the class about blue tape is your friend.
I think you saw it. Yeah.
If you're not in the US, it comes in other colors in Europe, I realized. But in the US, it's always blue, and it's painter's tape. It's the stuff they put around where they don't want the paint to go, and it's not as sticky as masking tape. It's the best. It's, it looks like this. But in the US, it looks like this. I've seen it I was in, I don't know, Iceland or something, and it was like yellow. So crazy.
But tape is definitely your friend. Yeah. And easy and removable tape that you can use. Yeah.
Yeah. Susan asked, do you need 2 jigs for each tapestry? No, just 1. So this would be the only jig like in this photo. And then there'll be the supplemental warp will go from the top of this to the top of the loom.
For making 2 tapestries at once, then you use 1 jig and warp it as though I warped this as though it was going to be 1 wide tapestry, and I'm just weaving it in 2 sections. I will not weave this center warp right here. So this other tapestry, let's see if I can do that. This tapestry here will use all of these warps, and then there will be this one right here, so that can you see that? I can't even tell.
Yes.
I can see that.
Yes.
That will come off, and then I can cut that and then work that end back into each separate one. So to weave multiple tapestries, you kind of have to do them horizontally. But you can weave several at once that way. Vertically, and this was 1 jig, 2 tapestries.
I did do once a shaped for Selvedge tapestry, which I just remembered because I found it recently. So there's another idea I think we maybe even talked about it somewhere in the class at some point. So it involved a cardboard jig, but Janice says it's called frog tape in Canada and it's green.
Oh, perfect. That would be more fun, actually. I would love to next time I go to Canada, I will buy tape. Tourists, these are what you get if you go try. I mean, I never go anywhere, but if I did go somewhere, I could go around and buy the local color of painter's tape.
Yes, that would be fun. I mean, if we were big travelers, I think neither Sarah or I are really big travelers, but we could have a whole thing about collecting tape around the world.
That would be really fun.
I think it'll be someone else's project. I don't think we're going to do it.
Yeah. More power to you, and let us know. I would love to see the array
of
all the different colors.
Oh no, I can just see they're coming in the mail, Sarah. We're going to get shipments of painter's tape from people all over the world now.
That would be very expensive to ship.
It would. Shipping is horrible. It's probably not worth it, you guys.
Really cool, though.
A picture would be good. We could collect the pictures. Let's see. This is a great question from Monique. Could a complete, it jumped on me. Okay. Could a complete beginner to tapestry weaving do the course?
I don't see why not. The actual filling, it would be better probably to take one of Rebecca's classes simultaneously. But really, once you have the thing warped, you can stuff anything you want into that weft. So you could practice, you could do anything. It really doesn't matter. Once you have a way of getting the warp on and off, which is what this teaches you, what happens in the actual weaving. I mean, I talk about it some, and we do some weaving in the class. So there is a little bit there. But as for, then if you want to refine your technique post Fringeless, then you could take one of Rebecca's other classes or go to one of her live classes if you can, to learn the specifics of really controlling your weft. I think my friend Sally, who learned Fringeless first, she'd done hardly any weaving, and then she learned Fringeless, and then she came and was like, oh, now I want more Rebecca. And I believe came to a number of your classes because she saw that what happened in between the two supplemental warps was
Important.
important and infinitely interesting.
So interesting. Well, so the class is basically I actually counted this morning that we have 26 videos in that class, plus 9 bonus videos right now. And the bonus videos, there'll always be more of those because that's how I am. I'm like, oh, I need to teach how to do this. But they're broken up into small bits. A few of the videos are quite long, but most of them are like, here's 10 or 15 minutes about how to do this thing. But there's also some videos of Sarah weaving and, what actually happens on the loom once you get the warp all on there. And so I just think it's a really fun, I still love this class so much, obviously.
Well, it was so fun to
fun.
do. It was so fun to do.
We had fun. Shoot, what else was I going to say?
There was
Go ahead.
one other question about multi-layered pieces, and we were trying to figure out exactly how to describe that. And I came up with a thought of like weaving with 2 looms, 2 supplemental warps back to back, because you could actually like strap the looms together. You'd put on 2 warps, and then sometimes use the 2 together, and you could adjust the tension so that they would come together, and then they would come apart again.
Yeah.
That was as close as I could get. But
It's a really interesting, obviously this woman, Rama, I think is her name, is playing with 3D stuff and layers. And this is the stuff we love, you guys, like experiment. Yeah. Like Sarah's, she showed a mobile. Someone else had questions about getting tapestry off the wall, which is something Sarah talks about in the class also. But like she's made pockets for shirts and what other things have you used it? Amazing, all kinds of things.
A lot of pockets and mobiles. And in fact, there's a whole, if you look in my archive, I can't remember what year, 2016, 2017, 18, there were a bunch of things. I've done a lot of long word tapestries. Actually, I wove them. These aren't for Selvedge necessarily. But actually I did these on a backstrap loom. So sideways, no less, but here you can read it better this way. So you can just make long straps for things and then stitch them together or just hang them around or, wrap them around your head because you can, or...
That's awesome.
So, yeah, all of the above.
That's fantastic. I love those long word tapestries you've done too. And I think a lot of the backstrap ones are like 3 Selvedge, right?
They're all 3 Selvedge, yeah.
So Monique had a question. We're going to have to wrap up here in a minute, you guys.
Yeah.
But if you have any last, urgent questions you want to get in there. I know we all have so many questions for Sarah, but it's fun. And we do answer questions in the class. That's the other thing I didn't say is that I'm always there answering questions every single day. And when there's something that I know that I don't know, I will ask Sarah and she will fill you in. Because she always knows.
Or she makes something up.
Monique did ask what's the best course to take alongside the Fringeless class to actually learn how to weave. So I have an intro class, Intro to Tapestry Weaving, which is a very short class. It's a great way to jump in. The little weaving tapestry on little looms if you want to do a small format stuff, or warp and weft is my more comprehensive weaving. Or you can get my book, which has all this, if you like to follow things by a book and you don't need the video interface, the book is also a good way to jump in.
The book is phenomenal. It has beautiful, instructions and photographs and really, I actually learned a bunch of stuff from that book. So, I was supposed to be writing an introduction. It was like, oh my God, that's so cool. How did I not know that? So, do you have it? Oh, there it is. Yay.
There it is. Sorry, you can't hear me. There it is. Yeah, that was a big project. Anyway, and Sarah wrote the foreword to it, which is wonderful. I had some of these we're not going to get to, you guys, but we can answer them in the comments, or obviously we'll answer anything in the class, but we can, I think, you know what? I think there will be a blog post about this probably next week. So I will go back and look at the questions we didn't get to and we'll get you more answers. So watch my blog, and I'm sure Sarah will have stuff on her amazing newsletter. She writes this thing called The Gusset, you guys. You have to follow it. Her website is a fieldguidetoneedlework.com. go there, look for the newsletter link, and you have to read it. I'm telling you, it's every Tuesday. It's the best. It's the best.
There are a lot of comics, actually, a lot of drawings and tapestry and whatever else is going on.
It's fantastic.
It's
Okay,
almost as good as your blog.
Oh no, it's far more joyful. And all the music in the class was played by Sarah, which is amazing. I had to convince her to do this, but she played it. It's just beautiful. A couple of people have mentioned that in the comments. So she plays.
Really? Oh,
yeah, she plays
thank you.
concertina, and they have mentioned that. The music is beautiful. And actually, one person said they haven't actually done any of the warping or weaving yet, but they just listened to the concertina music. So,
well, maybe that's
it's really great. And we should mention, Elaine noticed this, but notice Sarah Swetter. She is a prolific knitter. I think you were probably a knitter before a weaver.
I was.
And designs her own patterns and everything. And it's so fun to watch the videos in the class because every day she had a different sweater, and they're all amazing. They are
my
amazing.
clothes. They are my clothes. Yeah. This, and in case you wanted to know, this is a Rambouillet fleece spun in 1988 and dyed with indigo. So, because they all have, I just remember that ridiculous nonsense about them.
Yeah. She's so skilled at so many things. It's amazing. That creativity just...
Or my poor hands.
Your hands, I know. It's, yeah. Debbie asked, when does the coupon code expire? It expires in a couple months, so grab it now and use it when you can. I don't know exactly what the date is, but I can look it up. I made the coupon code a week ago. I have honestly forgotten what the date it expires. It's sometime between now and the end of November. Might actually be the end of November.
Sort of Thanksgiving-ish?
Thanksgiving-ish. So, yeah. Do you happen to know the brand of that easel? A couple of people have asked.
Does it say?
Thank you,
There's a lot of marks on it.
Janice says she uses the book all the time. Thank you.
It doesn't seem to say on it. I got it through an art catalog thing. It's probably a sort of a style. I bet there's a lot of them.
I think any art supply store, if you're just saying, go and look at their easels, and they'll have.
Yeah.
Dick Blick probably has a ton of them.
Blick.
If you have an art supply store in town, go in and talk to the people who know about painting, and they'll probably have easels. A whole bunch of people have said they love the gusset, like many people, Sarah. So I am not alone in my adoration for this newsletter. Y'all, I'm telling you, if you do nothing else from watching today, go read the gusset. A field guide to needlework.com, or just Google Sarah Swett. Wait, here's how you spell her name. Google her and you will find it. Gusset is Gusset. Okay, and then the one thing we didn't really talk about is that the warps are split in the Fringeless. And so you can, you know what? Here, you sent me some pictures. Let me just pop these up a second so you guys get an idea of. So you want to talk about these a minute, Sarah?
Oh, well, you can see how this little house, I wish I had a little pointer, but it actually, as I was making the triangle of the roof, there's actually little half steps where you can see where I split the warp. So instead of doing just 3 jumps, instead of 3 stair steps, I actually have 5, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different steps up there, which makes it a smoother triangle. So then the next one you can see, I think there's that one where I have the needle. You can see me.
Yeah, let's see.
Going around there. So I actually use a needle for that tiny piece of to go through in between. Oops, yeah, it looks like I caught a piece of my warp there. I probably redid that in a minute because you can see it's going through. But there you can see where I split the warp when I'm filling in the weft behind so that I can make those half steps. So that's the only awkwardness, is getting it through there on a very small warp. It's hard to do with your fingers. It kind of needs a needle. But for tiny little steps in small places, it's extremely handy if you have a little bit of detail you want. And sometimes it's just fun. I mean, otherwise it doesn't matter. You just treat it as a regular warp. Although it does make the choice of warp important, because your warp will be doubled. You don't want to use the same warp you would necessarily use. But we talk about that in the class. But the same warp you would necessarily use if you were setting it, say, this is at 10, setting it at 10 nths to the inch. Normally.
Cool. Okay. That was one piece we missed.
Yeah.
That one of the advantages of Fringeless is that you can actually split the warp. And so you can get those little details. And I think you do that a lot when you weave letters too.
Not that much, actually. I don't. I try not to do that because it would get way too fiddly and there's so many letters, especially like when you're weaving a novel, that I did things as simply as possible. And I tended to use the actual structure of the weaving, like the hills and valleys. Hills and valleys are massively important with weaving little letters, but that's a whole nother story.
Awesome. Awesome. You guys have been really great. Christine just said my aunt who's about to turn 100 just finished a sweater. So we are happy to hear about the people who are still making when they're 100. Nice. Yeah. Give us a hug give her a hug from us, Christine. That's awesome. So many people. Oh no, the puppies. Oh, I promised you the puppies.
Beryl. Come here.
Yeah,
Beryl.
here comes Beryl.
Come here. Let's see if we can.
Let me do this so you can see Beryl.
Here you are, cutie.
Hi, sweetie.
Can you see the lobe? You're not even looking at the thing. You just want, hopefully, some licks. Good girl. There you are. Yeah.
She just wants some hugs. And we did not talk about dogs nearly as much as I thought we would.
We did not.
There's my little guys. Sal is 16 weeks. She just got her last puppy shots yesterday. And Bo is the rescue who is, I shouldn't keep saying that about him. Poor guy. I mean, Beryl was a rescue too. It just means that he's had some trauma in the past. And he's almost 2. So they're doing great. So we'll have to talk about dogs again some other time.
Well, our blogs are awash in dogs.
They're awash in dogs. They are. Yes. So it's been just so fun. I'm talking and looking at your list again. But a couple people, Sarah, have said that when are you going to write a book with a catalog of all of your work? So there's a lot of interest in that. She does have a book called Kids Weaving, which is so fun.
Yeah. Long out of print. But it's still floating around. Yeah. But a lot of the work, a lot of it, still a lot not, but a lot of the work is on my archive, in the archive of my website. But there is still apparently a lot missing that I just forgot about.
Well, I think it's so interesting that you are like, oh, I forgot I wove that tapestry. I mean, I guess if you've woven hundreds and hundreds of tapestries that it's natural to have forgotten some. And we didn't used to have digital ways of taking pictures. Right. So,
and that was a big deal back then, getting them professionally photographed.
Yeah,
and so I just didn't have images, or I have one sort of casual image.
Yeah.
That's a whole rabbit hole of the juxtaposition of physical photographs to digital and the ridiculous amount of material you end up when you're overlapping and not quite sure where the universe is going.
I know. Yeah. Life has gone like this in recent years. So,
and yet we are live on YouTube, and it's been absolutely heavenly. And thank you so much, Rebecca, for setting this up and doing the class and making the class happen all those years ago. And
well, thank you for agreeing to do it. It's still so much fun. And so I hope some of you are going to join us in Fringeless. Yeah. But if not, we will always still be there on our blogs and
so happy
everywhere
you came
else.
Today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being there, and all the love and support is fantastic.
Yeah. So I know there are more questions. I promise I will go through them, and I'll stick them on my blog. How about that next week? And if there's stuff that you all need answers to, we'll do that. The coupon code expires. I will look it up for sure, but I'm going to say around Thanksgiving. Okay, you all. It's been fun. We might have to do this again sometime, Sarah.
Oh, we might. Now that it's not quite so scary. Second time, piece of cake.
Well, also,
which direction to look.
Yeah, and I figure I'm not going to bring up past technology issues that I have had, but this one I think maybe we got the tech right. So I hope. People said the audio was good. I asked, and they said it was okay. So hopefully we're good. Okay. Y'all, it's been so great to see you. And
Thank you.
we'll catch you again sometime
Yeah.
in the, I don't know, upcoming future. And we'll see you in the class.
Yes. And somewhere up the world.
Somewhere up the warp. I like it. That's perfect. All right. Keep making stories, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.